What's needed to win an Age of Sigmar game? Or indeed any similar type of game? Luck? Good heavens no. If you lose a game because your dice didn't roll kindly, it was you that messed up, not Lady Luck. Superior strategy helps, using sensible tactics to carry out that strategy, which involves not requiring lucky dice rolls in the first place. But in terms of something that you can do long ahead of the game itself, you can design a stronger army. But in match play, the armies are of equal strength, aren't they? Well, not necessarily. Some units get extra benefits when used in conjunction with other units. So building blocks of your army which take advantage of these synergies can mean that your army becomes stronger than it otherwise would be, even though it costs the same points. In this video, I'm going to run through several examples from various Age of Sigmar battle tomes to highlight this aspect of army design. So, taking Nighthaunt first, one block of units that I particularly like in this army are the Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed as a general, a Guardian of Souls with Nightmare Lantern, a Spirit Torment, a unit of Mermorn Banshees, and a unit of Bladegeist Revenants. So let's look at what each bring to the table. Now, beginning with the Mermorn Banshees, which are my favourite, the early part of a combat with them is fairly unremarkable. They only have one attack each, with 4s needed to hit. For 20 points each model, you might expect a combat unit to have rather more. But it's 3s to wound, -2 rend, and D3 damage per unsaved wound. So the back end of their attacks has a nasty sting, but with so few attacks and only a 50% chance of hits, even a decent sized unit of 8 will statistically do okay, but not great. And with so few attacks, you're more likely to be at the mercy of bad rolls. But the Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed has a command ability which allows him to give a friendly unit within 18 inches +1 attacks. +1 attacks would be very nice for any strong combat unit, but for a unit of Banshees, it literally doubles their power. Having double the number of attacks also shields you against the chances of poor rolls. Sure, it makes you less likely to get stunning hit rolls, but if your strategy relies only on average rolls, then more attacks means more consistency. The Guardian of Souls can also help out if they are kept nearby. They add +1 to wound rolls for nearby friendly units, so although those 3s to wound are decent, 2s makes for even more sweat on your opponent's brow. Finally, a nearby Spirit Torment will also allow them to re-roll 1s to hit. So let's take a look at what difference this makes. In my potency tables, which I produce for all units that I'm thinking of including in an army, I'm going to assume that the Banshees have 4 models able to participate in the combat. This might account for being unable to pile in with enough or having lost some models. I'll also assume that the target has a 4+ save because I don't use units like this to take on grunts if I can help it. So as we can see from the table, each of the nearby characters adds something useful to the combat, and the cumulative effect is that the average wounds caused by those Banshees is increased by a factor of 3.5. But is it worth the points cost of using those heroes just to buff that unit? Well, there's a few steps we can run to think through it. Now here I've added a couple of extra columns to show the points cost for the unit. Note that I've used the points cost for 8 Banshees, even though I'm only using the attacks of 4. This is because, as I noted before, I can't rely on having the full unit in combat. Some may be too far away, some may be killed off. Never plan for ideal conditions. The cost column is simply the points value divided by the average number of wounds that I expect to cause. It should come as no surprise that the Knight of Shrouds adds the most value, as I'm doubling the number of wounds caused, but he doesn't cost as much as the Banshees. However, in general, the points cost doesn't seem worth it, even when combined. 72 points per wound caused for the lone Banshees, but 86 to have the heroes tag along. Of course, the heroes won't simply be just tagging along. All 3 heroes can get involved in the combat as well, and they all bring something extra in terms of non-combat abilities, which I'm not taking account of here. In fact, if anything, going from 72 points per wound caused to 86 points indicates that I actually can hide the heroes away from combat if needs be, without paying an exorbitant sum for it. But I also mentioned the Bladegeist Revenants. These can't get the extra attack from the command ability because I'd only have 1 command point per turn, unless I save up for a major encounter. Still, they get the benefit of the buff from the Guardian of Souls and the Spirit Torment. In fact, the Spirit Torment buff is even better for them because it allows them to reroll all failed hits, not just once. But before we combine everything, let's look at each unit on its own without any buffs from other units. Now, note here that I'm paying for 10 Bladegeist Revenants, but only using 5 for the combat stats. As with the Banshees, I can't assume that all would make it into combat. If more do, then all to the better. Now looking at this, the Spirit Torment looks like the bargain, but what I want to focus on is that the full cost of all these units divided by the number of wounds they could cause if all in combat, but too far apart to synergize, is 65 points per wound caused. But let's look what happens when we put them all together in range for buffs. We go from 65 points per wound caused to 38. This represents a much greater damage inflicted on our opponent through taking advantage of unit synergy. Now, I'm not saying that we should make blocks like this throughout the army, but even having one such as this means you are getting more for your points. It also represents a more devastating combat phase against that opponent, increasing the chance that you can finish off their unit quickly and move on. Now let's look at another quick example from the Maggotkin of Nurgle battle tome. Now, I'm looking to base a Nurgle army around some putrid Blight Kings. There are a couple of heroes which can boost their potency. Now, just looking at one of those heroes, the Lord of Plagues, and giving it the same treatment as the Night Hunt, but on a small scale, I came up with this. Now again, I'm paying for more models than I'm using, as I can take 5 wounds before losing a model. I'm going to say that a unit of 5 will be able to get 4 models into combat. Now, taking their combat prowess into account, I came up with a figure of 52 points per wound caused in a single round of combat. Now, the Lord of Plagues allows that specific unit to re-roll ones to hit. This is similar to the Spirit Torment for the Night Hunt, only it just works on Blight Kings. It doesn't even work on itself. This means that the effect is more muted. So, although you definitely get more benefit by taking the Lord of Plagues together with the Blight Kings, as compared to fielding them out of range of each other, you don't get a massive bonus. In fact, if you don't want to take the Lord of Plagues at all, it wouldn't make that much of a difference. It doesn't even equate to a single extra wound caused on average in a single combat. Of course, there are other factors to consider. With 2 units of Blight Kings in range, or even a larger single unit, the effect would be greater. The Lord of Plagues also has the chance to generate extra contagion points, which may be used to summon more units in. You may also find synergy in an army that is less easy to quantify. For example, the Blight Kings have a movement of 4. This gives your opponent a decent chance of avoiding them if they don't wish to engage. It certainly prevents the Nurgle player choosing their target easily. Sure, with a musician, they get +1 to run or charge rolls, which is as good as an extra point of movement in almost all turns, but they are still not very swift. But a great unclean one carrying a bell can provide a movement boost of 3 to nearby units. This is an example of synergy which, although won't directly boost your destructive powers, gives you a better chance of getting into your chosen combat, and more quickly as well. As such, it may indirectly boost your damage. There is a similar synergy between a hero called a Lord of Afflictions and Blight Lords, which are the flying mounted units, which he can give them a movement boost to shuttle them right across the battlefield. Of course, when it comes to movement of the Blight Kings, going back to those, you could also place your Feculent Narmor in a cunning place. What this allows you to do, if you have run that turn, if you're within 7 inches of it, you can also charge. Now, for the Blight Kings, that would effectively give them +2 movement from that musician that turn. But that's less an example of synergy and more of strategy, which will be covered later in this series. As a final thought on synergy, let me give you an example from the Stormcast Eternals army that I'm also planning. Now, when it comes to delivering an elite unit into combat in tabletop wargames, you have a number of options. You can shield it with some cannon fodder as it approaches, but your army may not have such units to throw away. There may be attacks which don't need line of sight, and it may get messy if your meat shield either hasn't been destroyed or doesn't get out of the way quickly enough as you'd prefer. You can pack out the unit with enough models to absorb the expected casualties so that you have enough to cause sufficient damage once they do arrive in close combat. But these are elite units usually, and so expensive just to throw away to missile fire or magic. Also, if you take heavy losses, you're likely to take heavy losses also in the battle shock phase. Or you can sometimes heal damage caused. Now, one such unit for Stormcast is the Lord Relictor. During each of the Stormcast hero phases, they have a chance to be able to heal D3 wounds on a nearby unit. Now, general Stormcast models tend to have 2 wounds each, so you will be able to do some good if one has taken a wound, but that effectively wastes the D3 possibility, unless the Relictor himself or another hero nearby is in need of healing. So the ideal situation is to use it on elite units which have more than 2 wounds. Now, I am a big fan of the Tempesters, but they are too expensive to simply pack out the units to cope with casualties. So my preferred option at the moment is to deploy the Lord Relictor along with suitable infantry unit in reserve and have them pop up nearby where my Tempesters, which are cavalry, will be making their charges. During subsequent hero phases, if the Tempesters are in need of healing, then my Relictor has a 2/3 chance of being able to do that. If not, then he can still help with an alternative ability, which has the possibility of reducing the hit rolls of an enemy unit and thus helping avoid damage on the Tempesters in the first place. So I hope these examples give you a few ideas about the benefits of considering synergy in army building in order to get more out of your points total. In the next couple of weeks, I'll be releasing the second in this short series, which focuses on bang for your buck, a look at working out the damage contribution from different units. In the meantime, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification for further content. Click the like button if you enjoyed the video and comment down below if you have thoughts of your own. And until next time, I'll see you later.